Okay, everyone, good morning. It is 11:30. My name is Ryan Ellis with the National Weather Service here in Raleigh. This is the weekly impact weather briefing for Central North Carolina for the period of May 20th through 27th, 2019. You might notice an extra day on the end there. Due to the Memorial Day holiday next week, our briefing will be on Tuesday at 11:30. So same time, just on Tuesday because of the Memorial Day holiday. As far as this week is concerned, today looks to be maybe the most active day, but really not too much going on. We do have a cold front that's going to move across the area, but by the time it starts to do that, it'll be much later in the day and into the overnight hours. So as things heat up this afternoon, we could see a strong thunderstorm or two across the area, particularly across the Triad. And then as time goes on, that activity should move eastward, but as it does, it'll lose the heating of the day. And so places to the east and the eastern part of the state may not see as much activity as up towards the foothills and the Triad and places like that. So, but look for that potential for maybe a strong storm or two. Nothing widespread, and there's not a lot of wind shear, so we don't expect too much in the way of any severe weather. Can't rule out an isolated severe storm, but really not too much activity. And then as we go on into the rest of the week, things will cool off a little bit after this front goes through for the next couple days. But then as you note, late in the week and the weekend, you see this big high pressure over the southeast. That's going to cause some pretty warm conditions over the area, dry and warm, and humid, but not incredibly oppressive. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. So while temperatures will be high in the mid to upper 90s in some places, heat indices will be about the same. So at this point, we're not looking at much in the way, certainly not excessive heat warnings or anything like that. But being that it is the holiday weekend and maybe one of the first times of the season that we are seeing these temperatures, we could see some effects, especially on those particularly vulnerable populations that might have some issues with the heat. So again, for the severe weather here, we're in general thunder for today from the SPC outlook. And notice again, as you go towards the southeastern part of the state, that goes away. That's reflective of that front moving through. And then later in the day, the heating losing the instability to have storms later in the day. And then, of course, tomorrow and Wednesday, no storms expected at all. Rainfall, very meager across the area for the next 7 days. So this is something we might have to start paying attention to when we start talking about drought situations or maybe situations where fuels are drying out, and we could have a little bit more concern for fire weather and things like that as we move forward, as things continue to dry out. But as you can see from the legend on the left, even if you're under one of the more favored areas this week, you may only get between 1/10 and 1/4 of an inch of rain total. And with that, so really the story this week is about the heat, and I would like to call your attention to some tools we have available for you. You may have seen that we are producing some statewide maps in some of the briefings that we've had in the past, and those are available to you on the web if you'd like to look at them. The address is there. It's weather.gov/RAH/NC. And as you move across the top of the page, there's different tabs, one for temperature, one for wind, one for precipitation. And then you can actually mouse over the different days and get the statewide picture for whatever it is you want to look at. Now we have 7 days of high temperatures on there, 6 days of minimum temperatures, and then those heat index maps will become available 3 days out, and there's even a 3-day maximum heat index map that you can use. Again, though, this is an example for Saturday, so this would be high temperatures. So you can see low 90s across the north and upper 90s across the southern portion of the forecast area. That'll be the case pretty much Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And again, those heat indices should be about the same to a little bit higher. So maybe touching close to 100 in the Fayetteville area. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Another tool we have for you, and feel free to provide feedback on these as you use them. So this is called the Enhanced Hazardous Weather Outlook graphical, and it is basically a depiction of where we have hazards or potential hazardous weather. And so for our case this week, you can look on the right here and you can see under excessive heat that as we get into Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it turns yellow. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you look at the legend here, yellow is for limited. So if we go down to our table here, limited would be a maximum apparent temperature, which is the same thing as the heat index, of 95 to 104 degrees. And then it gives you some of the typical things you might see associated with that. So that's another tool that you can use to kind of assess various hazards. And it doesn't apply to just heat. Severe thunderstorms, wind gusts, hail, tornadoes, anything like that. Is also on here. So you can find that at weather.gov/ra.ehwo, or if you just go to our homepage and scroll down on the left-hand side, you'll see in this outlined in red here, graphical hazards. You can get to it that way as well. Again, this is an experimental product, so if you have feedback on it, provide it to either myself or Nick or even our ra.reports@noaa.gov email. Also wanted to include, since it is the first kind of heat episode of the year, a couple of infographics that you can either cut out of this presentation or you can go to the website listed above, and you can actually download these and distribute them as you see fit. They're just little infographics on what people should do in these situations, and there's some in there for how to deal with your pets or what to do to make sure that that you're being careful about not locking your pet or your child in your car, things like that. So those are available to you as well. Check that out if you'd like. So going forward, we start talking about this maybe a little bit more of a prolonged heat episode as we look at 8 to 14 day temperatures and notice that the entire Southeast is under a 60 to 70% chance of above normal temperatures in the day through 8 through 14 forecasts, and also below normal precipitation. And so we start talking about 2 weeks of very little rain. We have to start talking about drought situation. Right now, we're in pretty good shape. This is the most current drought outlook. And you can see some abnormally dry counties there down east. That may start to creep north and westward as we move through this hotter episode. This is the last 7 days of rain. If you happen to be in Sampson County, you're right under a couple storms that sat there for a while and rained out about 2 to 4 inches of rain in places. Most of us were not that lucky, and so you can see here just not a lot of rain over the past 7 days, and certainly not a lot of rain over the next 7 to possibly 14 days. So to summarize, cold front again moves through today. A few strong storms possible, severe weather not really likely today, but isolated is possible. Hot and dry for the end of the week through the weekend. Temperatures and heat indices both probably in the mid to upper 90s in the worst cases. And then, of course, again, next week's briefing will be on Tuesday morning at 11:30 a.m., so mark your calendars due to the Memorial Day holiday. Otherwise, if there are no questions, I hope everybody enjoys your week and your Memorial Day weekend as well.